So basically, what I wanted to know is what do people know about all these innumerable decarbonization efforts that are going on? And the reason I was talking about decarbonization specifically is because we're doing a lot of conversation about zero net energy or zero energy. And my perspective is that we really need to be focused on decarbonization because zero net energy is only holding the status quo at a certain level. It's really not reducing the carbon in our environment. So when I talk about California climate change legislation and regulations, I'm curious. I should probably find a way to see pictured people's because I want to see reactions here. To see what people know about the fact that in 2002, California did the legislation which allows community choice aggregates, CCAs, to be formed. The majority of them didn't get formed until around 2010, 2016, and 2022. And I'm curious if people know about what a CCA is and the fact that it was formed in 2002. And another big piece of legislation that came about was the one that's called the, what do you call it? California Community, I'm looking for my notes here and I won't find it. California Community Development and Climate Change Action, which was a Senate Bill 375 in 2008. And those are the two bills that have had significant impact on the decarbonization efforts, and all of the planning and housing elements are based on the 2008 legislation. So there's so much going on with state legislation that impacts our profession. And I just thought it would be interesting to know if people understand all of that. And then there's REACH codes, which are codes that go beyond the building code. So does anybody know what REACH codes are and where they're being implemented? I'm just curious if that's the case. So in Santa Clara County, we have a CCA called Silicon Valley Clean Energy. And out of the, there are 12 cities in Santa Clara County, plus the unincorporated county, that form Silicon Valley Clean Energy. San Jose is not, Santa Clara is not, and Palo Alto is not. And those 12 cities have come together, and each individual city has expanded their building code in the way of REACH codes for all electric codes. Many of you will know that, but it's interesting to know how much is different between them. Does it apply to all new construction, residential and commercial? Does it apply to renovations? So there's a lot of dynamics going on about REACH codes and how they affect our projects and our clients. The other thing I wanted to bring up was time of use, utility rates. That is something that's only been in place for about 2 years, and it has a tremendous amount to do with reducing our decarbonization, reducing our carbon footprint, because it's about the utility grid and how the renewable and carbon-free power is put into our grid. So I can't tell from anybody if they know about that stuff, so I'll just assume we're going to go ahead here. All right, so this is just talking about the mission statement of one particular CCA. It's to reduce the dependence on fossil fuel by providing carbon-free power, affordable and reliable energy, and innovative programs for our particular community. And I wanted to highlight this because I thought it fit into the spirit of our statement for the year, which is to elevate a balanced community. So all of this is trying to provide the carbon-free grid at the lowest possible price make it reliable, but also do innovative programs that are going to be reducing the carbon footprint. So just talking about this, people may not know, most of you are too young to know that in the 70s, when the Pyramid Transamerica building was built, it was designed so that no exterior, no perimeter light could be turned off. And literally 3 years later, they had to rewire the entire building to make it so that they didn't consume all of the electricity. Times change quickly. This is just showing how data is now becoming even more relevant for architects and the use of energy. This talks about housing stocks, when they were built, what type they are, and very importantly, whether they're renter occupied or owner occupied. We all know the weather changes are happening, and the Atlantic Ocean is ridiculously warm. People may not know about the power generation of the grid. And the US grid, as you can see here, coal provides 39, almost 40% of the power. And then you've got natural gas. And we're in California. This is an older chart, but California is way ahead. And it's important to understand that many other places in the country are not utilizing the grid the same way we are. Okay, and I wanted to highlight transmission, because transmission and distribution, people don't realize that when you look at your bill, you have a separate charge for transmission and distribution. That's because PG&E controls that, and it's the same rate for everybody. So it's important when we show the sides on the gas distribution. Yeah, you'll see the impact of what main distribution has, both for gas and electricity. And just a bunch of new things you know about the Google building, which we had great luck with. Letitia, thank you. Another one is putting solar panels floating on sewage treatment ponds. That's in Healdsburg. There's new innovations actually being done in Korea, where they're putting solar panels over water ducts. In California, we certainly have enough waterways and channels to try it. And we're doing a lot of new, people ask, where's this energy, clean energy coming from? And the CCAs are actually building, they're contracting, not building, I should say, they're contracting for major new utility power plants across the entire state. Just one power plant from Silicon Valley Clean Energy is, think of a football field. Think of the size of a football field and multiply that by 1,600 football fields of double-sided rotating solar panels. That's just one project, and there are multiple dozens of these projects build solar, wind, geothermal, and every other innovation being built to add clean power to the grid. And I mentioned the rate changes and time of use. You may not notice or paid attention. I'm hoping that some of you will understand that you used to pay your bills in terms of how much you used. It was just quantity driven. And now it's time driven. And the cost is lower when there's power produced at a lower cost. So 4 p.m. to 9, 10 p.m. is the highest cost for producing power. And let's see. So my favorite, Boston duck curve. These are the real quack quack ducks, but the duck curve we're going to talk about is where power supply enters the grid. And you can see on the top one that the red bar is listed as renewable curtailment. It meant that so much renewable energy was being available to the grid, but could not be used. So there's a whole lot of policies and procedures, time of use particularly, that are changing that. And you can see that the thing very fat because it was overproducing. And now we got to get it on a diet. Here's how power is used by sector. And this is the emissions by sector. And it's amazing that the non-commercial no, the off-road and non-commercial road use is so high. I was surprised by that. Here in Santa Clara Valley, the point we made earlier about being a home ownership or apartments, you can see where the single family housing unit has 63% of the number, but 83% of the consumption. And here's where I wanted to just point out that the electric power generation and use, ignorance isn't bliss. The power supply mix is dirty, but the use of electric power is where we can use our imagination, as is the dirty kid's face looking his eyes dreaming. Okay, so why do we care about methane? Methane is 84 times greater greenhouse gas than CO2, and gas is methane. And methane leaks, I can't see any expressions here, so it's hard. This is a diagram of methane leaks around Boston, okay? And it's because of the distribution network, not just the production, but the entire piping and distribution network. So when people say, I want to have my gas stove, you have to realize you have to put in not only the infrastructure, it's the distribution to each house, which has the potential to have these methane leaks. Methane concentrations for transportation. This is San Francisco and Oakland. And this is the pattern from cars being driven. And you can see in the downtown areas where, and the freeways where the colors are orange and pink, and then the blue is more the residential area. But they've tracked this, and when Uber and Lyft and other cars come around, the methane concentrations actually went up because they're driving around as much. So California has climate action goals, and this is to show everyone how incredibly daunting the task of reducing. So it needs to be, as I'm saying, not zero net energy. We've got to decarbonize. And all the energy that we did for CCAs reduced the greenhouse gas by 35% from day one when companies like CCAs went into business. But on the chart of where the state wants to go, that's all that electrical power generation can impact. Everything else has to be decarbonization. Okay, again, just different diagrams showing how daunting it is based on the sources and how we're forecasting, and no one knows how we're going to get there. So one of the good things is that by doing clean energy and doing time of use, you can see how the yellow, which is the solar, is reducing the greenhouse gases if it's used at the key points in time. Basically the same point there. So we put, in other words, we put the duck on a diet and he's going to be able to fly, he, she. So Silicon Valley Clean Energy, for those of you who are in its territory, but many other CCAs are doing the same, are focusing strategic plans on power supply, mobility, and the built environment. And I'll just go through that. This is the power plant I was telling you about with the 8-hour batteries. There are 1 million batteries to support that one project. Okay. And in terms of the built environment, you've seen a lot of conversation about gas stoves and using and the conversion to heat pumps. This is an analysis that basically says, and I believe I'm correct, that hot water heaters generate huge amounts, 50% of the greenhouse gas emitted from an everyday existing house. There's tremendous amount of to children and homes with gas stoves and gas hot air furnaces. And the induction range automatically turns off when it's not in use, eliminating the risk of fire. Another program is the Building Decarbonization Joint Action Plan. There's a lot of conversations about resilience and sustainability. All of this coming in terms of decarbonizing, getting rid of the reliance on any type of fossil fuel, and different programs that are being done. So again, coming back to the long-term perspective, we need to do more in the way of thinking of decarbonizing as well as getting to net zero, because net zero will only get us so far. And one example, what I thought was important is if you did retrofits of the housing stock, it would take 33.3 retrofits per day for 20 years to help meet the goal of the 2030 and 2050 to get our greenhouse gas emissions down. Okay, CCAs just fight. There's been lots of progress made. We're looking for ways to do clean power with health, safety, and equity. And then I've got some resources that one can do there. So I don't know how fast I did that, but let's see, where am I? I tried to do it fast.
Awesome.
So
Thank you, Liz. You definitely did it fast, but it's a lot of good information that I feel like you mentioned, that we could, at least for some of us that didn't know a lot of it, start to look into and learn more about. So I'm really interested. Can you also share the maybe presentation?
yeah, I think it was sent out as part of one of the notes.
Yeah, I think, Liz, it was like a PDF, if you're okay with me sharing that.
Yes, I had expected it would go out because I think people will want to look at the information and sort of review it.
Does anyone have any questions while we have Liz and still a few minutes on the call?
Well, I do have one,
Mhm.
and I typed it in the chat box. So Liz, I'm just wondering, with all these California energy projects, renewable energy projects brought online in the future, what would be the future energy mix? It'd be
So,
less
good question.
dirty, obviously.
Yeah, good question. There have been 2 times that I'm aware of where the grid was actually 100% clean. I think they lasted for 3 minutes. So when we're doing all of these new grids, new power sources, it's making the grid cleaner and cleaner. But to your point, when will it ever be 100% clean, or will it ever? The answer is it will approach 100% clean over time. But what we have to face is the reality that all these renewable sources of energy are not going to meet the peak demands, like last summer when it was in September, when it was 100 degrees. You have to have the power plants, the gas-fired power plants, to come online very quickly. So you have to accept the reality that that's a need. But the grid itself over time will get cleaner and cleaner. And that's to everyone's benefit. But again, when you saw that little tiny orange block that talked about a clean grid in terms of the 2030 and 2050 goals, it's incidental to a clean grid is incidental to what needs to be done in the environment. It's the use, it's the decarbonization of our use. Using power when it's clean, when it's less expensive, and requiring non-fossil fuels to be built in terms of the use, going to heat pumps and going to all electric. Those are the things that are going to make the difference for the future.
Yeah, good point. Thank you.
Does that make sense from your perspective?
Yeah, it makes sense. So I, for one thing, like is kind of warm right now. I'm not turning on any big fans and things like that. I'm doing super localized cooling right now. So I have a USB fan that only draws like maybe 2 watts. So I have that on right now instead of a kind of big room kind of fan. So I'm just like trying everything, from my stove to cooling, thermal comfort, and everything to kind of reduce the demand from the grid. So that is just a personal example I'm sharing. Yeah, and I
Right.
have the fan actually right here. Okay. It won't let me show you, but okay. The cable is not long enough. Anyway,
And Letitia, I think your camera is off maybe because we're not seeing you. We're just seeing a blank.
yeah, well, my work computer wouldn't let me
Oh,
do
that's fine.
Zoom. Yeah. It's a Google-based computer, so it's not Zoom friendly.
So I think Letitia's comment is really to the point. Utilizing energy, even if it's clean energy, isn't going to get us to a decarbonized world. It isn't net zero, isn't going to take us far enough. We have to do more, i.e., use less power, but also convert everything we can to electric, that non-fossil fuel, convert to non-fossil fuel. And that's why I thought the example of how many existing housing units that are utilizing gas right now would have to be converted to electric use over the 20 years to actually make a difference to get to the goal of the 2050. And it was 33 plus housing units every single day for 20 years.
Do we have the data as to
Magnitude.
how many of that is happening now? Like how many are being converted per day?
0.000001.
Okay.
One of the things that Silicon Valley Clean Energy is doing is they have a grant to convert. You know how older apartment buildings have those through the wall heating units or electric resistant heating units? They have a grant now where they're converting all of the heating in the individual units to a heat pump system. And that not only gives people a more balanced and less expensive heating, it also provides air conditioning. So those kinds of things.
Yeah, I guess people have to be aware of it to start looking for it in the right places and know that those
Right.
grants are available.
I mean,
that they can-
even for those of you that have large clients like Google and Intuit and LinkedIn, they are all making special arrangements to do 100% carbon-free power in all their facilities. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
Back to you.
I just want to thank you. This was great. Like you said, it's a thought sparker that we could all take away something from that caught our attention. And I'll definitely distribute the presentation, the link that you sent with everyone, with our WIA, and the recording. So thank you so much for doing this.